Okay, greetings and salutations to all those who may be listening to this new training session which I am embarking on, specifically designed on a twofold aspect, to train, to educate, to create an awareness, specifically to group admins and to the role and responsibilities that group admins have. However, in addition to that, there are a couple of WhatsApp groups whereby the creators of the groups have in actual fact made it possible for group members to post requests for emergency assistance, whether it be they require SAPs, Metro Police Departments, ambulance services, fire services, or even breakdowns. And on certain groups, there are dedicated persons responsible for the dispatching or assisting in the logging of these particular incidents. As a result of that, the plan that I have with regards to the training is to, as I say, create that awareness and also to educate administrators more specifically on what not to do, or more specifically on what not to allow on the various WhatsApp groups. And I know that this is going to become a rather controversial subject within various circles. And unfortunately, what group administrators and, for a better word, group dispatchers, I personally don't like the word dispatchers because of the concept of who's actually dispatching and the role that people are playing. But I will discuss that in more detail throughout the training. Now, as I say, this is going to be a controversial subject in many circles. And unfortunately, what group administrators and dispatchers need to understand is that there is various legislation for which we are responsible to uphold on our WhatsApp groups. And to be quite honest with you, my attitude towards any person wanting to be an administrator or a dispatcher, you need to ask yourself whether you are prepared to take on that responsibility or not. If not, then don't become an admin or an administrator, because you could in actual fact find yourself in a court of law one day and charged with criminal offenses. But we'll discuss that in more detail. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, what are you on about? Well, that's the purpose of doing the training. You know, people don't attend training sessions because they know it all. They should be attending training sessions in order to educate themselves, to be made aware of, whatever is applicable to the tasks at hand. Now, up front, I would like to say it is the 11th of October 2024. This will be considered as voice note number 1. And in the next voice note, I will do an introduction of who I am, so that everybody who is in actual fact attending this training, and this isn't the first training module of this nature. I've done many others which are available on YouTube. I converted the training over to YouTube videos or discussions where people could listen to them. Now, in closing, what I do is I do the training via voice note. It makes it easier for people on WhatsApp to follow whilst they are driving to work, driving around, driving home, or even while they're cooking, for example, they could be listening to the voice notes. So I try and keep the voice notes under 5 minutes. That way people then can, move on and do something else. Remember whatever voice note they are on, and then come back when they've got time to continue listening to the voice note. For the voice notes, there's no actual visual presentation. It's just impossible to do. And this particular training session could account for the better part of an hour's worth of training. So I've reached the 5-minute mark, and we will now proceed with the second voice note. And my name is Chad Milam. I am the founding incorporator, one of the 3 founding incorporators, and a director of Disaster Relief CERT, CERT being the Community Emergency Response Teams volunteer network. Moving on with the admin and dispatcher training voice note number 2. This particular 5-minute segment, I would like to cover briefly my background, explain who I am, what I'm trained in, what I've been involved in, and what I'm currently doing for the benefit of those attending this training. This does become necessary because over the years, I have found there is always somebody out there who will challenge, the presenter of any sort of presentation, regardless of, what the training is. And the same thing applies in the personal capacity. I have had many people actually challenge me, demanding to know who it is and who gives me the right and authority to do what I'm doing. All right, so basically my background, as I say, it's Chad Milam. I'm currently a director of Disaster Relief CERT, CERT being the Community Emergency Response Teams network. Myself, John Groom, and Stephen Reynolds founded Disaster Relief CERT and registered as a non-profit company. We are also registered as a public benefit organization, and our mandate, as per our memorandum of incorporation, being a legal document and a legal entity and a legally registered non-government organization, is to, in actual fact, prepare communities to be able to assist in times of disaster. So we in actual fact look at bringing on board members of the communities as volunteers and prepare them to be able to help their local community in times of disaster. And as such, this does have a rollover effect into the WhatsApp administrative roles and groups that we find ourselves in. My background, I was involved with the South African Red Cross Society for close on 20 years. I was employed, besides being a volunteer on a Red Cross volunteer for almost 20 years. I was also employed full-time as the assistant coordinator of manpower and training, looking after, or at least being involved in the 700 odd volunteers and the ambulance services and the detachments, and assisting people with and overseeing the first aid training along with John Groom, who was the coordinator of manpower and training at that time. But I also came back a second time as the operations manager, where I was in actual fact trained by the International Committee of the Red Cross in disaster relief and management. At the same time, I also qualified along with John Groom as an emergency medical assistant level 1 paramedic. We weren't known as paramedics in those days, but that training was based on the EMT level 1, which was run in the United States of America. And of course, that syllabus was carried over to St. John's, Noordhoek, and Red Cross. And of course, we did the training on that. And John and myself were also appointed first aid instructors. As the 3 directors, John, Stephen, and myself, we are also licensed amateur radio operators, ICASA licensed, and of course, that is another one of our specialities, and have been involved in radio communications. I think between the 3 of us, jointly, if we take an average of, about 20 years as radio amateurs on John's side, and 10 odd years on Stephen's side, and 10 on my side, well, that's already 40 years. However, I still also have the good old-fashioned CB radio background as well. And of course, that took me up a couple of years in terms of radio experience. Okay, so that being said, has basically covered everything that in a very short and general censor the word my background. I am going to be making available a YouTube channel broadcast where you can actually attend additional training, and there's a more comprehensive background into who I am and what I am. In addition to that, on a Joburg citywide basis, in terms of disaster relief cert, I actually have got, I think it's about 88 suburbs whereby I'm an administrator on those groups. I'm also an administrator probably on an additional 20 odd WhatsApp groups nationally, ranging from traffic all the way through to crime and various emergency groups that deal specifically in emergencies. Okay, that's the end of voice note number 2. We will move on to the next voice note in due course. 11th of October 2024, we're continuing with the admin and dispatcher training. This is now voice note number 3. With regards to the overall training, there's going to be, as I've mentioned in the previous or the first initial voice note, we're going to be concentrating on several aspects, and that's firstly, we're going to look at the administrators' roles and capabilities and responsibilities and requirements, etc. However, I do need to just add a disclaimer here. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it must be noted that when I start referencing all of the legal acts, the legislative rules and regulations and sections, it is based on the pure understanding of what the English language actually stipulates, because amazingly enough, our South African legislation is quite clear. When it says do not do something, it doesn't mean, well, maybe you should, or maybe you could, or maybe it is not relevant. Do not means just that, do not. So the very first thing that I need to point out is that I by no means claim to be a lawyer or a qualified legal expert, and all the interpretations are based on the simple interpretation of the English language contained within the various acts as discussed moving forward. So the acts that are going to become relevant not only to the administrators but also to the various dispatchers as and when you guys do come up. Of course, the very first act that we have to look at is the Bill of Rights as enshrined in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa there, and by extension, of course, the Constitution itself. Then we also will be looking at the Personal Information Act, number 4 of 2013, otherwise referred to as the POPI Act. The South African Police Service Act, number 68 to 95, is also applicable to what you as administrators and dispatchers do, as is the case with the Films and Publications Amendment Act, number 11 of 2019, which is also coupled up with the Cybercrimes Act, Act number 19 of 2020. One of the other acts that I would like to include is the National Health Amendment Act, number 12 of 2013. And as we work through it, you will understand that this does, in actual fact, have some implication in terms of whatever the administrators and the dispatchers are required to comply with, and also what they need to prevent from taking place moving forward. It is at this point that I must point out to every single person who is considering being a WhatsApp administrator or even a dispatcher. This is not a case of, oh, great, I've been made an admin of a WhatsApp group and now I can do whatever, whatever I feel like doing, and I can control everything that's going on the group, and I can decide, what information should be shared and what information should not be shared. Or at least it, adds some credibility to who I am, whoever I am might be. That is not the case, ladies and gentlemen. You need to understand that your role as an administrator is crucial to what happens within your local community and is crucial to what happens with your members or the members who are part and parcel of your particular WhatsApp group. You are taking on an extremely valuable and crucial role as a member of society. And you need to take your administrative roles seriously right across the board. The same applies with the dispatchers. And if you cannot commit yourself to doing so diligently on either role, and I'm the first one to say to you, you should not be an administrator or a dispatcher. Now, I'd like you to understand that I'm accustomed to training at first aid levels. As a Red Cross instructor, I trained up to a gold medal first aid. This is where we train people to save lives. And if you can't take your role and your training seriously, then it's time to bail out. That is just a fact. It is not meant offensively or otherwise. As I said, this is very controversial, and you need to consider these things in a very, very serious light. Okay, that's the end of voice note number 3. I will now proceed with the fourth voice note. Still the 11th of October 2024, and this is now voice note number 4 as we continue the admin and dispatcher training. In the last voice note, I said you guys need to take this, role of both admin and dispatcher very seriously. And as pointed out in a previous voice note, not all WhatsApp groups actually do have dispatchers. And it is at this point that I want to state that the term dispatcher, I don't believe is the correct term for people that are on WhatsApp groups dealing with emergency situations. So let's just firstly have a look at what a dispatcher will in actual fact be doing, because I think it is time to change the terminology, and somewhere along the line we need to arrive at a new definition for the role of what is currently being seen as an administrator. As a dispatcher, because as an administrator, the objectives of the administrator are quite clear, and that is to ensure that the group integrity is maintained. In other words, that the group doesn't just, whether it's a general WhatsApp group, and more specifically if it is an emergency related group, that it's just not a free for all and anything and everything and general chats and conversations and attacking the people, etc., is carried out on the group. Because ultimately, as a group administrator, you should be looking at developing your groups in such a way that the community, the target footprint that you are concentrating on, you get on as many members and residents within that particular area or suburb or whatever the case onto the group, so that a specific purpose can be fulfilled. And if you got people now posting porn, for example, well, naturally other people are going to leave the group, and that doesn't help the integrity of the group or contribute to the integrity of the group under any circumstances. And then, of course, when you're looking at the further roles of the administrators, that the group rules are abided by. And that is a very important rule or function of an administrator. In order to ensure that group rules are abided by, and if the group says or the rules stipulate no general chatter or no discussing of politics or no missing animals to be posted, then the administrators need to be able to shut down that conversation and delete those messages. But we will in actual fact cover the deletion of messages in more detail a little bit later. The same thing applies to the group members being respected. My apologies. So group administrators need to ensure that group members are respected. It doesn't help having one group member coming up and calling another one an idiot or worse. we can't allow that on the group. So administrators, your role of managing the WhatsApp groups is important on this area as well. Also, that no illegal content is posted to the group and that the discussion remains topic specific. So illegal content, as I said, there are various things within the various acts that may or may not be posted, which we will cover as we work through the training at the moment. And now if we take a look at, these are in essence the important roles, just generally speaking, that administrators need to take into account and ensure that things run appropriately. Now, before I go on with the legal aspects of WhatsApp groups, I want to go to voice note the next voice note, which will be voice note number 5. And I want us to have a look at the role of the dispatcher in the general sense of the word as well, in order to see if we can arrive at a new term to be utilized to describe that particular role. So I'm going to end off voice note number 4 now, and we will proceed in the next voice. Still the 11th of October 2024, I'm going to be continuing with the admin and dispatcher training voice note number 5. And as I mentioned in voice note number 4, personally, I don't believe that the term dispatcher is an appropriate term to be utilized. And let me explain why that is. But before we get into the explanation of why, we need to look at the structure of the WhatsApp group in particular. So that now, we're not just looking at a general conversation group or community group where the administrator is, and an administrator has very specific roles as mentioned in voice note number 4. We are looking specifically at people that have a task of ultimately at the end of the day assisting community members on emergency groups. So let's look at that group in more detail. This side of the training is specifically designed for groups where community members are brought onto the group, whereby they can, in actual fact, raise concerns in the area, or report crime in the area, or call for assistance within the area or within the auspices of that particular WhatsApp group. And one needs to understand that we need to be very careful when we advocate this kind of platform for people to request assistance. So there is a danger involved in us looking at putting a group together where we have community members that can call for assistance on the group. And as a result of that, one needs to ensure that there are dedicated and properly trained and educated group members that will be able to assist the general community in the assistance and obtaining the assistance which they require. Now, when you look at this on an overall aspect, if you take IER, for example, some people refer to them as dispatchers as well. And as I've said, I don't believe this is the correct term, because you've got a community with members from the community in a group, and then you've got people that are going to assist that community in obtaining assistance. And those people that we now know as dispatchers are not actually dispatching anybody. Understand that the term dispatcher means a person who is in control of sending specific people to specific locations and having the capability of being able to redirect them to other locations. In other words, they are the controllers of the service they represent. So GPG ambulance, Gauteng Provincial Ambulance, for example, have got a dedicated control center and structure in place whereby people can phone in, request assistance, obtain a reference number directly from GPG, and then pass that on to the radio control room or the control room, whereby a GPG ambulance will do the actual dispatching of the ambulance. And the question I ask is, the group member assisting the community, are you in actual fact dispatching, or have you become a relay station? In other words, you are taking information from a group and you can be doing one or two things with it. You could be contacting GPG directly and obtaining a reference number and then feeding that information back to the group. Or you could be taking that information received on the group, the call for assistance or help, and you could be passing it on to IER and then waiting for IER to actually phone GPG, obtain a reference number to send it back to you so that you can relay it back to the group. So in essence, I'm inclined to say dispatcher is the incorrect word. And I think I've come up with an additional term that will be utilized. Let's put it in on voice note number 6, because I did mention there are dangers of setting up groups in this aspect. So I want to cover that danger and then bring in a term that will assist in overcoming some and or preventing some of the dangers. So let's end off voice note number 5 and move on. Still the 11th of October 2024, voice note number 6. In the last voice note, I mentioned the fact that setting up a WhatsApp group where general community members can call for assistance from the group with regards to the need, for example, ambulance, SAPs, or even Metro Police. And I said that this could be rather dangerous, and I need to justify that particular statement as a whole. So by having a group where people can request assistance, it becomes dangerous when an expectation is created. What that means is this: when we create emergency-related groups that are community facing, where community members can ask for assistance or call for assistance, generally community members forget about the alternate ways and the more appropriate and correct ways of calling for assistance. And what we tend to forget is, hang on a second, what happens when we have no cell phone connectivity? What do we do when we have no data or airtime on our phones? What do we do when WhatsApp stops working, or Telegram, another alternate messaging app, stops working? What happens if those applications or apps are blocked for any reason? How do we deal as an individual with an emergency situation when the only way we know to call for help is via a WhatsApp group? Now, a lot of people are going to, but it'll never happen, it'll never happen. It's happening on a daily basis. Administrators and those responsible at the moment for dispatching, I want you to take cognizance of one simple fact. There are times that cell phone networks fail because of the lack of electricity. We saw this happen on a regular basis during load shedding. Today, we have got multiple mini substations and substations that don't have workable infrastructure, that keep on failing. People are running their batteries, their cell phones flat They cannot call for help in any manner because of the lack of electricity. Then there's the data, the issue story that comes into play when people run out of airtime and data. And then in times of a disaster or in times of other large-scale events, like we've just seen in the United States of America with Hurricane Milton that went through Florida, there are 3.8 million people without electricity. All of the emergency groups that are usually operated via things called like Zello and WhatsApp are dead. Why? Because there's no connectivity. There's no cell phone networks that are operating. So we need to be very, very careful when we start creating this dependency and start leaving and giving and leaving the impression to community members that this is the appropriate way that emergencies should be dealt with. And again, it comes back to this question about the group of people, whether they should be called dispatchers or not. And I'm going to take this to the next level in voice note number 7 as we end with voice note number 6 now. Still the 11th of October 2024, voice note number 7. I still want to wrap up now on why it is important that we don't create a dependency and the danger that's associated with it. Because at the end of the day, people are going to start relying on having the group respond to their call for assistance. There could be times that the people that are willing to assist, even the administrators, they might not be able to respond because they don't have electricity, or maybe they've run out of airtime. So now you've got a situation where community members are expecting to be assisted and there's nobody there to assist them. In the last several years, specifically since COVID-19's lockdown, we've noticed that messages are delayed for several minutes, sometimes even hours, because people are out of range, because people's cell phones have gone down. They put a message out on WhatsApp to say, I need help, thinking that it's been received by others, but it's never even been sent. And that is where we're going to lose lives as well. So before we continue, we need to find the correct way of calling for assistance primarily, and then reverting to WhatsApp as a secondary means to call for assistance on a greater sort of scale. And that is to utilize the emergency numbers that are available to us, such as 112. And community members should in actual fact dial 112 of their own accord before relying on WhatsApp. And the reason for that is quite simply, you don't need airtime and you don't need data. The only thing you need is power on your device. And then, of course, you need to ensure that the cell phone towers around you have got connectivity. So when you do that, you call in specifically 112. It's toll-free. It doesn't cost a cent. No airtime, no data needed. And then when a person has completed that and gotten and have received a reference number, then they can post it on the group for the purpose of advising the rest of the community of the situation. For example, there's active shooting taking place in a particular area. You can then in actual fact warn the remainder of the community. But then you also notify the other administrators on the group that, yes, you've logged the call, here's the reference number. If those groups have got other key role players and stakeholders like JMPD or SAPS officers or medical or fire personnel on the group and private security service providers, then naturally they can also be able to respond and to assist and to come to a point whereby the community now becomes involved through your other patrolling aspects like CPFs and patrolling organizations. So we need to really consider whether or not we create a dependency or not. And when we utilize the best of both worlds, that is by calling 112 and posting it on the group, or better still, if it is within a household, one person can dial 112 and the second person can put a voice note or type up a message, and you tackle both of these at the same time. Whoever posts a message can always add the reference number as soon as the reference number has in actual fact been obtained. And then it brings us back to that point of the role of the administrator and the role of the other person who we currently call the dispatcher. And we will cover that in more detail in the next voice note, which should be voice note number 8. So I'm going to end voice note number 7 now, and we'll move on from there. 11 October 2024, we continue with voice note number 8. Now, as pointed out in the previous 2 voice notes, you can see that there is a little bit of a dilemma as to whether or not the person should be considered a dispatcher or not, or termed a dispatcher. But for the purposes of this training, I want us to leave the term in play until we start discussing the dispatcher's roles in more detail. I firstly want to cover the roles of the administrators, because dispatchers need to understand the roles of the administrators, and need to understand why there should be a separation between administrators and dispatchers. And this can only be created once everybody understands the role of the administrator, but also the responsibilities of group members in a broad sense of the word, because what the group members do definitely has an impact on the administrators, and this, of course, is also going to have a rollover effect on the dispatchers themselves. So from a dispatching perspective, we're going to deal with that in a little bit more detail. Let's get into the legal aspects of WhatsApp groups in particular, but this does actually apply to all social media platforms. And the objective to understand just the implication of what is posted on a WhatsApp or social media group, and then the applicable acts and how they in actual fact apply. So let's just round off at this point with a request. Considering what I have had to say with regards to the term or the terminology, phrase and word of dispatcher, perhaps this is an ideal opportunity for the group members, as you currently are within the group, and any future group members coming on board at a later stage, and undergoing this training and awareness creation program overall. If you have any idea of a different word to use, I think it's a time to actually post it to the group so that the group can start considering the new term. We also need to understand that it might be a bit like farting against thunder, because of the number of groups where dispatchers and the term and phrase dispatchers is in actual fact utilized. So I'm going to close off voice note number 8 quite early, but this is a time where a poll will be posted, and it's going to be a simple yes, no, I don't care kind of poll as to whether or not a new phrase or term should be sought and utilized moving forward. So let's end off voice note number 8, and we shall continue from this point onwards. 11 October 2024, as I continue with voice note number 9 on the admin and dispatcher training. We're going to now cover the legal aspects of WhatsApp groups, specifically for administrators primarily. However, as I've mentioned, there is a spin-off to dispatchers as well. And some of the main implications of what is posted on WhatsApp, administrators need to be aware of the fact that all social media users, not just administrators, therefore dispatchers, group members, anybody who forms part of any group on social media, whether that be on TikTok or Facebook or WhatsApp, or even as individual group members on Facebook or Twitter or TikTok, every single person, that is all social media users, are legally liable for what they post on WhatsApp. And when you get a group member, an ordinary group member posting something on WhatsApp, a lot of people think, well, okay, that is the only person who is responsible legally for what is posted. Unfortunately, that is no longer the case. Now that the Cyber Crimes Act and the Films and Publications Act has been brought into effect, because WhatsApp group administrators are also legally liable for what the group members post, especially as the group administrators now have the ability to delete posts for everyone from within the groups itself. So, for example, if on one of my groups recently, somebody posted a message that it had something to do with crime, but the group user actually said, shoot that person, go out and shoot that person. And I think what you need to understand as group members, as administrators, and as dispatchers is that that statement can be considered insightful to violence. In other words, that kind of statement could be construed by another group member to be something that can legally be undertaken, where in actual fact, they then go out and they go and shoot that person or that group of people. That is what incitement to violence is where one person stirs another person up into a violent act, especially, all violent acts are in essence criminal in nature. And group administrators, in actual fact, need to know that these kinds of statements, the user is legally liable for, but the administrator is also legally liable for it. In other words, if they don't delete that, that administrator and all of the administrators on the group can be equally held accountable and liable for that kind of post, especially if somebody goes out and shoots a whole lot of people. Now, what I would like to say before I actually discuss the acts that you need to be aware of, now that I've given you a practical example on this, it must be noted that the minute that that post is put out there and somebody loses their life as a result of it or are injured, and the group administrators collectively can be held responsible and accountable, don't always think about, yes, but it's only got to be something against the law. Because where we've got the Criminal Procedures Act, every person within the Republic of South Africa has a civil course or recourse that they can follow. In other words, an administrator or group of administrators could be charged with an offense in terms of the Criminal Procedures Act or any of the other acts which we will discuss in the next voice note. But they can also have civil charges brought against them and they can be brought before a civil court of law and still found guilty of what might not be a criminal act. Food for thought on that one. Okay, so this was voice note number 9. I'm going to end it now, and we'll continue with the applicable acts that administrators ultimately need to know in the next voice note. 11 October 2024, we're continuing with voice note number 10. And on this voice note, I want to briefly cover 2 very important acts which administrators as well as dispatchers and group admins need to be aware of, and that is the Films and Publications Amendment Act number 11 of 2019, as well as the Cybercrimes Act 19 of 2020. And every administrator needs to know about these acts. And also take note that I'm at this point not going to raise any discussion on the Protection of Personal Information Act of 2013. I only want to concentrate on the Cybercrimes Act and the Films and Publications Act. However, I do want to point out that the Protection of Personal Information Act does not apply to anything posted in the public domain, such as WhatsApp groups and other social media platforms like Facebook. And it only applies to businesses and government departments. I just want to be quite clear about that. At any point, when somebody puts something on the group, it's got nothing to do with the POPI Act under any circumstances whatsoever. The POPI Act only applies to business and government departments. The Protection of Personal Information does, as I say, does not apply to any information that's available in the public domain. Now, as I said, I don't want to go into much detail on this, but for example, somebody posts a message in Facebook that says, I'm looking for my daughter. Please contact me with a name and a telephone number. And a group member sees this on Facebook and they come and they post it on your group. Whether that is an emergency group or general community-based conversation type group, it's irrelevant. They post that. As an administrator, please, whatever you do, don't go and delete that message up front and claim you're not allowed to share personal information, because the POPI Act does not apply to information in the public domain. And if the father or the mother or the friend or the family member has posted somebody's information there, especially when it comes to missing persons, lost persons, whether adult or male, it is in the public domain, and the POPI Act does not apply to that information available in the public domain. So even if I have posted my name and my photograph and my telephone number into Facebook, anybody who sees my name, my telephone number, and my photograph and groups them together, they're more than welcome to post it out into any other social media platform. And of course, as I said, this only applies to information of businesses and government offices, and it is where the government office or the business collects that information directly from a person. So for example, Stax needs my personal information to open an account, then Stax is responsible for safeguarding the information that I personally give to them. But if Stax collects my information from Facebook, then they don't have to protect that information because it's in the public domain. And of course, the same thing applies with government departments. So just in closing on the POPI Act, it does not apply to WhatsApp, and it does not apply to any other social media platform at all. The Films and Publications Act, on the other hand, is something that has to be discussed in a little bit more detail. as well as the Cyber Crimes Act, which I'm going to cover under the next voice note. So I'm going to end off voice note number 10 now from